Gentlemen, dear prospective students, a warm welcome in Leiden. Well, not really in Leiden, but we are here in a studio at the Witte Singel near the university library. It would have been great to welcome you here, but given the circumstances that is not possible. And therefore we have prepared this presentation for you, in which we want to share, I think, our enthusiasm for the wonderful program, the wonderful Bachelor of Archaeology we have here at the Faculty of Archaeology at Leiden University, and also give you a lot of practical information on what this education, what our program is about. So, studying archaeology in Leiden. My name is Miguel John Versluys, and I'm a professor of classical and Mediterranean archaeology. So the Greeks and the Romans, which I study, however, really in their global context. So from the Atlantic to the Chinese Sea, you could say. And I'm even allowed to tell you a little bit, but only a little bit, about my personal research later in this presentation. I'm very happy that with me is Vera van Heel, one of our students, and she will also later tell you something about her experiences as a student in Leiden, because that I will be positive will probably not come to you as a surprise, and therefore it's very important to hear what students themselves have to say about what we are doing here in Leiden. So what is it what we are doing? What is studying archaeology in Leiden about? Well, first, of course, this interesting theme of archaeology, of becoming an archaeologist. What do you do as an archaeologist, and what can you do in the future when you have an archaeological education? Well, archaeology is tied up with I think many ideas in the popular imagination. So there is, of course, Indiana Jones. So you don't have to be ashamed of that. We have all been watching Indiana Jones, I think, when we were a little bit younger, and you see a lot of interesting stuff on National Geographic, and that is all part, you could say, of course, of what we are doing here, and that is exploring our fascination with the past. We are all fascinated by the past, and we want to know more about it. This is something that we're going to explore in depth during your BA studies here at Leiden University. But there is another very different perspective, and that is that interest in the past and that knowledge about the past can be very useful also to, well, not only better understand, but perhaps even also tackle issues that play an important role in the present. And it's really those two that we try to combine here in our program at Leiden University. So on the one hand, there is this fascination with the past. So it's this archaeology about the study of human behavior and activity in the past, which goes from skeletons to empires and from houses to art, all kinds of things. But what we really try to do is to think with you about how we can look at current societal issues from such a historic or prehistoric perspective. And actually that's maybe more logical than you might think in the first instance, because there is a kind of tendency to see everything as new. So problems with globalization or climate change or migration, things like that, they are always perceived as a kind of dramatic change in comparison to where we come from. But actually, if you think about it, all those issues have been faced before by other societies, who actually managed often to be quite sustainable, while it now turns out that our way of dealing with the world might not be so sustainable at all. So in that respect, we can maybe learn a lot from how people in the past dealt with comparable challenges that we have today. So on the one hand, fascination for the past. On the other hand, the realization that the past plays a very important role in the present. Archaeology is very much also about the present. And we do this by way of instigating a hell of a lot of archaeological projects that you can engage with if you join our program. Archaeological projects in the Netherlands and abroad. Now, one of the fascinating things of archaeology, when I now more than 30 years ago decided to go and study archaeology here in Leiden, for me it was very fascinating that it was so what you call multidisciplinary. Archaeology is highly interdisciplinary, and on the slides that you saw or that you see now, you see this displayed. Archaeology is actually at the intersection of the three big domains in the scholarly pursuit, and that is the humanities, what we call the alpha sciences, the natural and environmental sciences, which we call beta, and the social sciences, gamma. And archaeology is all three at the same time. And already in high school, I was interested actually in all three domains, and archaeology allows you to combine them. And I think this is eminently useful, not only when you continue to have a job in archaeology or in academia. Because what we realize now more and more is that all kinds of complex problems, and many problems are complex problems, wicked problems as they are also called, that they need an approach in which you draw in all these three domains. So especially in our Western, what we call Western modern day society, there is the strong idea that natural and environmental sciences, that they are able to always solve our problems. Think about the whole debate about COVID, about corona. If there are vaccinations for everybody, the problem is solved. But COVID is also, of course, very much a problem of behavior, for which you need the social sciences. And it's very clear that people in the past have always been confronted with pandemics like this. So how did they cope with them? So all these kinds of problems, they need this triangular perspective, you could say. And therefore, it's this triangular perspective that is central, you could say, to how we understand archaeology here in Leiden. So once again, even if you move beyond this fascination for the past, and if you end up elsewhere in your career, we think that we can add something very important to your education by stressing the interplay between humanities, social sciences, and the hard sciences. Now, archaeology therefore very much has its own approaches, methods, and techniques, and on this slide you see some of them displayed. So of course we focus not on written sources, but archaeology focuses on objects and things, and therefore you have to find these objects and things, you have to find traces of people in the landscape, you have to document them, and then you have to move on towards interpretations. So very specific archaeological approaches, methods and techniques, and Leiden is very strong in developing innovative methods and techniques in this respect. But at the same time, so think about this multidisciplinarity, highly interdisciplinary, that I talked about, it also connects with the other sciences. And that is something that a lot of students see as something which is very commendable in the way that we have structured our program in Leiden. So, as I will discuss later, you start with a broad introduction in which we tell you what archaeology is about, but already soon it's possible to specialize in the direction that you yourself are most interested in. So some people, they are more interested in what the historians do because they work in a historical period. And of course, if you're interested in the Greeks and the Romans, you have to engage with debates within ancient history, and you have to talk to classicists, and you have to be interested in what they get from their historical sources. But if you're interested in deep prehistory, then you might work more together with people active in the hard sciences. We have a lot of people at the faculty working at the Americas, where people from the past are still, let's say, present in populations today, populations who continue the same kind of social structure, the same kinds of traditions. So then anthropology and the social sciences come into play. Then you go into the field to interview people, how they did things, and you use that to interpret your archaeological data. So wherever your own interest is, in this alpha, beta or gamma domain, you can always link with those specific domains from the perspective of archaeology, choosing more or less, developing, I should say, your own curriculum and your own education in this way. So what then is the profile of an archaeologist? Well, this is the list we made for you, and I hope you recognize yourself a little bit in it here. You need a broad interest. You need to be analytical. You also need to be practical, especially when you go in the field. You need to be creative to bring all these different perspectives together. You need to be theoretical, because you have to think hard about what all this implies. Hands-on is very important, and you also need to be persistent. So it's not that you need to have all these qualities already developed before you come to Leiden, but we think that it just gives an impression of what in practical terms an archaeologist is about. What then is, in a little bit more formal formulation, our aim, and what are the missions of our bachelor program? Well, in the first instance, it's really our goal to preserve and further develop your curiosity and fascination for the past. So when I started studying in Leiden more than 30 years ago, this was also one of my first incentives. It is simply so fascinating to know something about societies from the past. And this is something that we continue to nurture, but that of course we also develop on in an academic way. So our second important aim is that we add analytical, creative and communicative skills, and you also need social and ethical reflection. And that's of course a very important point in our program. Especially when you go on field work, and later on Eva will tell something about that, you engage with other societies and their past that you study. So how do you deal with that? Those are social and ethical reflections that are part of your program. If you finish your BA at Leiden University, we are sure that you are a dedicated and socially empathic researcher, and also a practical yet reflexive professional. And also that's something that very people find interesting and attractive about archaeology. It is reflective and theoretical on the one hand, you could say. You have to read a lot. But on the other hand, it's also professional. You go into the field and you really do things. And that makes for a great combination. Studying archaeology in Leiden, well, it's good to say I talk to you in English, which is not my mother language, as you already heard. We have a very international focus. So we have students and teachers from all over the world. So our research in archaeology concerns the whole world, large parts of the globes, and a very deep history. And as a result, also our staff and our students have become very international. So in our master program, for instance, 60 or 70% of the master students comes from abroad. And also there is a large compartment within the BA that comes from abroad. So if you come from abroad, I think you will feel at home very soon. It's really very international, and English is the language that everybody is able to communicate in. In the bachelor we have two specializations. One we call World Archaeology and the other we call Heritage and Society. I will come back to that, but already now with World Archaeology the focus is more on this interest in the past and going on field work and going for archaeological interpretation. And there is of course also, as I already said, the application of these ideas concerning the past in the present. Well, the latter, this heritage aspect, is even more central in our track heritage and society. So people who are more there to study the past in its own right, you could say, they often choose for World Archaeology because they're keen on doing fieldwork and going for archaeological interpretation. And people who are more interested in the impact of all this and the management side of all that, they choose for heritage and society. Both programs have an overlap of about 60%. There are many focus areas possible, and I think that's one of the main strengths of what we have to offer. So Leiden is the biggest faculty in the Netherlands by far, and one of the major players on the continent and also worldwide. We're very proud that we rank within the top 10 worldwide, and therefore we have a lot of specializations. So whatever period or whatever region on the globe you're interested in, there is a very good chance that there's always, in one way or another, somebody at the faculty working on that. And that person will be very interested to take you aboard as much as possible. Leiden University is very proud on being what they call a research-intensive university. And this means that teaching and research are intimately related. And that's something that's really true, especially at the Faculty of Archaeology, which is a faculty that is very strong in research. So from day one onwards, we will confront you with our research in our teaching, and we will try to make you part of our research as much as possible. So therefore, whatever your specific focus is, there's always a way to tie that into what we are doing in the faculty. There are about 100 first-year students, so this is a big cohort. We have 130 this year, but it's also not too big. So I think, and Vera will tell you something about that later, that we managed to have a very good atmosphere amongst the students at our faculty. It's also had to do with the fact that we have a great campus. So we are in a wonderful new and renovated building, a little bit outside the city center, but where there is a lot of place also for you to spend your day, to eat something, to catch up with other students, to lounge, to read books, and then go to the next class, etc. Leiden is a great city. It's very centrally located in the Netherlands. So everything from Amsterdam to Rotterdam, actually, it's one big city, you might say, and Leiden is right in the middle of that. So you easily might live in The Hague, for instance. It's only 10 or 15 minutes by train. And it's very small scale, which is something that many students like. I think I already mentioned the fact that we rank in the top 10 worldwide, but we're very proud of that, and we hope to retain this position. And one of our assets are really, I think, the state-of-the-art labs and facilities. Well, you get an impression of those over here. We have the material culture lab, the archaeozoology lab, there is a botany lab, and there is an osteoarchaeology lab. And from day one onwards, we do our best to draw you into the research that takes place over here. But also in terms of teaching, these labs, they play a very big role in our teaching program. So you will spend a lot of time there. This is a crucially important asset in Leiden, but we also have a crucially important asset outside Leiden. And those are our field schools. As you see over here, well, we might not cover the whole globe, but we have field schools all around the world, and we're very happy to welcome you in on one of these field schools. Moreover, and that's not even indicated here, there are a lot of cooperations with colleagues, national or international, that we can use, let's say, to bring you to the region and the specialization or the development of the methodology that you are interested in. And like I said, as we are a big faculty, by far the largest in the Netherlands, for instance, we have this large panorama to offer you. Very briefly on the entry requirements. So you need to have a fascination for the past and be very motivated, but that will have been clear. But you also need a Dutch high school diploma, which they call VWO, and then all profiles apply. So we are really alpha, beta, gamma, so all profiles apply. If you have a non-Dutch diploma that meets the minimum academic requirements, that's okay. It's very important that you have a good level of English, and we might test that. If you want to have more detailed information about these entry requirements, you can use this reference. And there's also the possibility later to chat with students, which we will explain more in detail, and you can also ask them or look at the website. So what does a BA program look like? Well, study is 40 hours a week, and this means that you have quite some time to also explore Leiden and do other things that you also should do as a student. There are about 10 hours of lectures, and then the rest, so the 30 hours, they are filled with practicals, excursion, assignments, and seminars. So you can spend the whole day on campus. For instance, you are there at 9 o'clock, you start with a coffee, it's always a good idea. Then you you prepare the readings for the first class. The first class is from 11 till 1. Then you lunch with your fellow students until 2 o'clock. Then you make an assignment, because at 3 o'clock there's your next class from 3 to 5. That might be a normal day at the faculty. There is an option in the first year to have still your assignments in Dutch. So literature is in English, and in this first year more and more classes will be taught in English. All classes are taught in English, but some both in Dutch and in English. But there is a possibility for Dutch students to first focus on the content, let's say, and then slowly move also towards writing in English, because that's not always easy. Yes, this is the next slide. Yes, sorry. There is something in Leiden which is, well, it's a serious program. So we have something which we called the Binding Study Advice, the BSA, in the first year. And this means that we require you to pass 75% of your classes. So this is just to indicate that it's no playground. It's very important that you come here with a professional attitude, and I can say that it's very doable to pass this binding study advice. Sorry. This is also because I think we have great support in place to help you with that. So there is a mentor and a mentorate, and we also have a great study advisor, and we have a lot of experiences from the past years with with helping you to get there, especially also the international students. So something then about this program, our BA program in general terms. I already told you something about it at the start of my presentation. In year 1, we give you an overview of what World Archaeology is about, but we also tell you something about knowledge production, and of course we try to convey to you academic and professional skills. And then we ask you to choose a specialization, so either this World Archaeology or Heritage and Society. BA2 already specializes, so you will have general courses and internships, but gradually you focus. So you deepen your knowledge and comprehension, slowly working towards this own profile, you could say. And that own profile is central to the BA3. There you can choose an option for choose the option of a minor, so 30 EC you can spend, for instance, abroad. Again, Vera will tell something about that later. And then there is the thesis. And in the thesis we try to tie you up with a supervisor concerning a region or a period of a methodology that you are interested in. And then for the first time you're going to develop really your own research, and that's always fantastic to see. World Archaeology, as I already said, is really this fascination about the past in its own right. So we reconstruct where we come from, we expand your knowledge and stories about the past. Once again, the importance of the past for the present, of course, plays an important role, as it plays an important role for all archaeology. But it is not the main focus. Here you can specialize in different regions and in different methods and techniques. And as I just explained, this BA 1, 2 and 3 curriculum that we developed for you allows you to do this. With the specialization Heritage and Society, the focus is more on this impact in its own rights, you could say. So we explore the deep history of current issues to better inform the design of future society. And just think of the examples that I just gave, from globalization to migration and from climate change to pandemics. The heritage that we have now is the result of all kinds of coping processes in the past, and therefore we can learn something from it today. The past is still with us in many respects, and that is something that government agencies, for instance, but all kinds of other groups in society are very aware of, you could say. So if you choose for the specialization Heritage and Societies, your interests and your qualifications will be geared towards that topic. Now, very briefly, and actually to show that those things are actually always coming together in one way or another with archaeological research, I was allowed to very briefly tell you something about my own research, and I will keep it very briefly, I promise. Already for a long time, I work on a site called Nemrut'da, which is in what is now Turkey, southeast Turkey, at the Euphrates, so to the north of Syria. And there is a site which dates to around 50 BC, where a king called Antiochus built a tomb for himself. And he did this, you get an impression from the slide, high up in the Taurus Mountains, on more than 2,000 meters. And he decorated his tomb, that to this day we have not found, with a very interesting religious program, in which he had gods from the Greek world, but also gods from the Persian world. And then immediately you have all kinds of interesting debates, because is this monument Eastern or Western? Is it Occidental or is it Oriental? And what actually do those terms mean? And what does this say about this region or about Turkey? Does it actually belong to the European community, or is it a state that belongs to the Middle East? So immediately you see the importance of the past for these kinds of present-day questions. Well, of course, I wrote a book about this monument. You do a lot on interpretation, the fascination for the past in its own right. But as you see from the slide in the middle, our work there was also very much engaged with preserving the monument for future generations, which of course is something crucially important. So heritage always in that respect plays a role. And what also was very important were the archaeological sciences, to help us with the documentation of the site, but also to tell us what kind of stone this was and how we had to treat these stones so that they were preserved for next generations. So this is just one example of an archaeological project where this fascination for the past in its own right and heritage and sciences logically come together. Well, it is these kinds of projects that we train you in when you do your bachelor with us. So your skills then after the bachelor program. There are general academic skills. So there's the critical thinking, the academic writing. Of course, you need to develop as an independent researcher, and time management, very important and not for students alone. And then again, these two specializations. If you go for the World Archaeology, we are more skilled in archaeological field techniques in the widest sense, heritage and society, more towards heritage studies, and also ethical and intercultural policy. Some first year courses, well, the World Archaeology course is a very important one. Here we give you an overview of human evolution on the basis of the specializations that are present at our faculty. So here you get a fascinating panorama from deep history towards yesterday, you could say. So you dive really into past human cultures from all over the world. And we very much, of course, try to stress the relations between them. In material studies, you get acquainted with archaeological artifacts, documentation, interpretation, and this is where you are at our various labs. And there's also a great course called Past and Future, in which you learn about the history and the future of archaeology, and in which we discuss why archaeology matters, and in fact has always mattered, as you can see from this young man, who undoubtedly also want to do his BA at Leiden University. Very important are therefore our internships. I already told you about how teaching and research are very much related at Leiden University, and especially at our faculty, and therefore internships are very important. So with World Archaeology, this is fieldwork in one of the field schools. I already told you something about that. With Heritage and Society, there are a lot of relations with government agencies, city councils, or museums where you can go for your internship. So fieldwork, really the archaeological practice, but also the ability to develop your own curriculum and perspective as part of that, plays a very important role in our educational program. And it's for that reason that we ask one of our students, Vera van Heel, to tell you something about that more in detail. Vera.
Thank you. Yes, so let me tell you something about my first year. Let's dive straight in. I chose World Archaeology, one of the 2 tracks, and part of that is going on fieldwork by the end of your first year. So you'll be trained in this throughout your whole year. You will learn, how to excavate in different environments. You will learn how to see the features in the sand. You'll learn all these things in practice, but then also, well, first in theory, but then in the end, by the end of the year, also in practice, as you can see here. You will be trained by staff and all the year students. So it's really, again, this faculty or this community building, which makes for very good and also sort of a low-key atmosphere to learn in. It feels very, it's very motivating to learn from your peers and the people you've been seeing all year, you've been given courses by. So this is an example. As you can see, it's very much a Dutch fieldwork project. There's rain. Obviously, there's rain, even in summer. But from the small photos, you can see that it can also get very sunny. We did all these different aspects that belong to excavating. So it's really about learning how to see the profiles, or learning how to see the features, digging up the features, but also washing the finds and actually seeing what you've got and what you've found. So this is an excavation in Leiden. Actually, behind the sand heap, the big sand heap you see on the big photo, there's the faculty. So it's really close by. You could quickly change or grab lunch back at the archaeology building. But it was a very great first introduction to archaeology, and the fun part is that you'll be doing it with all your first year, your fellow students as well. But then in your second year, there's so many options for fieldwork. You can really go all around the world. I chose to go to Jordan to a project by one of our professors, Peter Akkermans, in the, it's called the Black Desert, as you can see from the photos, it kind of shows. It's not the desert you probably think of when you think of Jordan. It's not in the south. It's not near Petra. It's actually in the northeast. It's a desert that covers Syria and goes over Jordan all the way into Saudi Arabia. And it's very much unmapped. So there hasn't been a lot of research done in that area. So that's kind of what we try to do in the Jordan region, to really map the landscape and sort of see for how long and even how people have been living there, because deserts are often seen as this place that people don't go, but what we found really shows something different. So it was very interesting to see that, and also to be in such a different environment. I was there for 5 weeks. We slept in the desert as well. We slept at an old oil camp. It was a small group, so it was a very intensive boot camp almost to archaeology again. Yes, you can see from the photos, what we did was mainly excavating burial cairns, as you call them. So those are grave markers usually. Sadly, a lot of them had been grave robbed before, but we were still able to analyze the way they were built up and if they were reused. Sometimes there were still human remains in there. Sometimes we found more personal belongings there as well, such as jewelry or armor plates, things like that. But we also found a lot of rock art, either in the script of the time, so Safaitic, which is a pre-Arabic script. Sometimes we find very recent rock art even. Sometimes it will be dated 1990 or something. So people have been there for such a long time and still are there. But also a lot of desert scenes, as you can see from the photo there. It's a hunter, probably chasing some lions. So it's also daily life seen through those pieces of art, really. And then shortly what a day looks like. You wake up very early, also to, get started before it gets very hot, because you're in the desert, there's no shade, there's black stones all around you. So it were early days. Usually we leave at 5, then we go by jeep, so it takes kind of a while to get there, but it's a beautiful morning ride, great to wake up, maybe have some breakfast on the go. And then you'll start excavating, you have a break, you continue excavating, usually till around 1, because then it really gets too hot to continue. And then final photos will be taken, which again shows how digital archaeology plays into everything here as well, because those were 3D models that were being made. Because if you remove stones, you cannot really place them back and you cannot retrace your steps as soon as you've done that. So it's very important to see the progress day by day. And if you have to go back, you can, even if you're back at home, because you got it all on your computer. So that was kind of a very interesting thing to see as well, how that's being done. Then you go back for lunch. In the afternoon, you'll do some find processing, which really means, again, looking at the finds, working with them, cleaning them, drawing them, all these kinds of things. And then, you have dinner. And you go to sleep early because you'll have to wake up early again the next day. And then shortly about my 3rd year, because as been mentioned before, the option is there to go abroad. And I was very happy and very lucky to go abroad in my 3rd year. I went to Jerusalem, where I did my minor. And it is a city, it's a place full with archaeology everywhere around you. There's so many archaeological sites or finds, everything. Archaeology is all around you. So that was already very interesting to be. But it also gave me the opportunity to choose courses outside of archaeology. So I also got to explore courses in religion or philosophy. Those are mainly things I focus on alongside archaeology. And I really like that new perspective on things, because it made me realize that I would like to combine religion and archaeology, which I ended up doing for my bachelor's. So in that sense, it had also been very useful for sort of developing what I like and where I want to focus on, apart from being, of course, abroad and having that great experience in general. And then I would like to invite you again to send all your questions, any questions you have about studying archaeology or being a student, either archaeology, Leiden related. We are happy to answer these questions in a bit. And then I would like to give the floor back to Michael.
Yes. Thank you very much. So this is really a great example of what you are able to do in your bachelor, and it also depends, of course, very much on your own initiative, and that's something we want to stimulate. So on the one hand, there is, of course, a tight structure that we have designed for you, but within that structure you have really a lot of freedom to build up your own expertise, your own curriculum, and work towards your own perspective. But then, after your bachelor's, far away for you now. So if you've chosen for World Archaeology, this gives entry to all Leiden MA, RMA and MSc specializations in archaeology. So this is great. The Heritage and Society has the same, but a little bit more in terms of global archaeology, heritage and museum studies. And there are also within the Faculty of Social Sciences, MSc tracks in cultural anthropology that you will be able to follow with that BA. So all kinds of options. When we look even further, and that is important because it's of course a very important decision that you now have to make. What am I going to study and where am I going to study? And we think it's very important to also be realistic about where this might bring you. And therefore we did extensive research to see where our alumni, where people who graduate from the archaeology program in Leiden, where they end up. And this is the overview. So about 60% of them, they find a job within archaeology. 40% of those 60%, they end up in what they, I think, often like doing best, and that is being a field archaeologist. So there are a lot of archaeological companies who do field work for governmental institutes or cities or whatever, because there is a law that if you build something and if there is something archaeological which is important found, then archaeological research has to take place. And it's for that reason that commercial archaeology has developed immensely over the last decades, and of course a lot of people end up over there. There are people going to research and education, so science, university, but also a lot of people, think of this heritage focus, who end up with government agencies or even in the museum sector. Now, from the 40% of the people who find a job outside archaeology, also they end up generally very well. And here you see the different types of jobs that they find. So commercial, supportive, but for instance, people who have acquainted a lot of a lot of experience with data and data management, they often go further into ICT, working with data, science, government, education, non-profit. And we think that the fact that these people are able to deal with complex problems in an intelligent way, which is, you could say, the broader reason for the existence of our program. Wicked problems which they can solve from different perspectives, always keen to look at the deep history, the history of problems, makes that they end up very well outside the domain of archaeology proper as well. Lastly then, and a little bit closer for you, because these are all stories about far, far away, the faculty community. I think we have a great faculty community, and this is because of the fact that we are a relative, of course, a very small faculty with a lot of social cohesion. So the students do a lot of things together. We have a great building that you see some impressions of over here, where we organize a lot to get you as a community of students together. So there are faculty lectures, there's a very lively study association called Terra, and by means of all kinds of initiatives we try to bring students already soon from day one onwards into our individual research groups. So if you are proactive, there are really a lot of possibilities here. I think, but we have to ask Vera if that's really true, of course.
Yeah. No, I have to fully agree on that. Yeah, that's one of the first things I noticed coming here, really, that it's such a, well, you have your own building, your own facilities, your own faculty, and that really creates a very welcoming and warm atmosphere in which a lot of students are really active, such as the study association or other committees. But then there's also these lectures done by your own lecturers. So you really get that sense of all the research that's going on as well as meeting your fellow students from other years, and yeah, even your fellow professors, really. So I'd say that's very much a big thing I liked about coming to study archaeology in Leiden. Yeah. Then let's see. I think this is everything we had to say about the program. So if you already know what you want to study, be it archaeology, we hope so, of course, but then you can start your registration. You can do this through the website called studielink.nl. But for a more clear overview, please check the website archaeologyleiden.nl first. There you'll find all the steps and procedures to apply. Then we would also like to invite you to come along and come to the faculty for a day, because that's really where you get that sense we've just been talking about, the atmosphere, what it is really like to study archaeology. So we will have a lecture, a practical, and a tour around the faculty. There's again the option to talk with a lot of different students. So if you're considering archaeology, I would definitely recommend to join us that day. It's on November the 26th. Please Google Experience Day Archaeology Leiden, and then you'll find the registration link, or try the QR code that's on the screen. Because I honestly think that's the best way to get a sense of what studying archaeology, or any study really, is like. If you have any more questions after this, we'll try and answer all your questions now. But if you would wish to speak to more students after, we have a video call. One of our international students will be there as well, along with 2 more fellow students. And you can also always chat with them. We'll be available until 4. So yeah, please, if you have any other questions or just wish to speak to more students, feel free to join in on the video call, which you can find through this QR code again or at the information stand for archaeology. And then I think it's time for questions.
Yes, questions. Let's see. So thank you very much for these questions. We hope we can do all of them, but once again, there are all kinds of possibilities to be in touch also after, let's say, this is over. And really the best way, if possible, is to join us at the faculty November 26th. So if that is possible, and if this presentation has really convinced you that Leiden is the right place for you in archaeology, the right study, please join us then. Let's do some of the questions.
Yes.
What is the acceptance rate for archaeology?
Well, as soon as you meet the academic deadlines requirements, you will be admitted anyway. So please check the website for that. There's no cap on students or anything.
No.
So you just need to meet the academic requirements
Yeah.
on the website.
Yeah. So far there's no cap. That might be the case in the future, but we hope it will not be. Dan, a little bit of a dangerous question, but an important one. What is the difference between archaeology in Leiden or Amsterdam or Groningen, where they also have great archaeology programs?
Yeah, definitely. Well, that is a very important question. What I'd say the big difference is between Leiden and archaeology in Amsterdam or Groningen is how broad the program really is, because you do get all these different time periods and all these different regions, whereas the other 2 are more focused on Europe and classical archaeology in that sense. And within Leiden, you also get all these different archaeological sciences in your program as well. So like, think of digital archaeology or osteology, zoology. These are all part of your bachelor, regardless the time period or region you choose. So I think you become a more all-round archaeologist. With this program.
Yeah, so I would say you're absolutely right. So they are, in a way, they are not so well comparable, because Groningen and Amsterdam are more specialized, you could say, than we are, because Leiden is able to give you, in terms of regions and periods, but also methodologies, simply the broadest overview, because we are by far the biggest, and therefore we can offer you a much broader perspective, you could say. Yeah. Absolutely. Is there a limitation, next question, when choosing the specialization, that only certain amounts of students will be able to choose World Archaeology or Heritage, for instance?
Short answer, no. There is none. No,
there is not. So far, that has not been necessary. So whatever you want to choose, we will be able to facilitate that. Another very interesting one, is maths important when studying archaeology? Vera, what would you say?
I would say it's not. I've done the easiest maths there was in high school, and so far it hasn't stumped my studies. In terms of sciences, it's really about understanding the basics more, and then if that really, draws your interest, you can choose to pursue it further and understand more like the science or the maths or chemistry behind it. But I think it's more important to understand what it means in terms of archaeology or your data, the data you gather, like why, for example, certain things preserve in a certain ground and why certain things don't. Those kinds of things are more important than being able to do equations and things.
Yeah, so I fully agree, and this of course very much depends on what you want to specialize in yourself or what you want to focus on. So if you really want to continue in the archaeological sciences, then of course a background in those kind of subjects is very much required. So sometimes I get essays, articles by colleagues that I barely understand, because they are so much into the domain of let's say hard sciences. But in general, so the answer is no, that's not necessary. And we just also had this presentation in Dutch, and there I made a confession, so I can also make this confession here. But I dropped maths in high school, and I only had languages and history, and I still made it as an archaeology professor. So no worries over there. Next question. How is the split in an archaeologist's time between teaching, research and fieldwork? Also a very interesting question.
Interesting, yeah. Well, usually you have just thinking about your bachelor here in general, you have a lecture in the morning and either a practical or some sort of work group in the afternoon. So in that sense, it's usually you take in a lot of information by a professor at first, then you'll do something with that information in the afternoon. So that's already, kind of just more than listening. So you always have that sort of in-depth perspective after getting general information. And then in terms of research, it depends. Yeah, you have your thesis at the end, but you will also have to write essays throughout or do presentations. So in that sense, you'll be doing research for your courses. Of course, then your thesis later, maybe also for your internships, depending on what kind of internship you do. And then for your field work, it's also a required part of your bachelor. So you will be spending quite some time. Quite some time is dedicated to doing field work. This can either be going to the desert or doing digs, but it could also be more in the lab or in a museum. So I would say it's very even out. You have everything that's there.
Yeah, it's maybe important to add, as you rightly say, I mean, we talk about fieldwork, but you can also do fieldwork in a museum or in a lab. It's more that you're engaged practically. So fieldwork is not only, of course, you need to go to the field because you need that experience. And we all instruct you how to do an archaeological excavation, often also an archaeological survey. But fieldwork is much broader, fieldwork internship, than only being in the field. That's very important.
Yeah.
We have also, I saw Marta Ferrarini. How much of the program is focused on Greeks and Romans? Maybe it's good that I take that because the honest answer is very little. So we really have a broad program, which is first of all World Archaeology, and then with a lot of attention for heritage and the archaeological sciences. So to be honest, if you are really focused on Mediterranean societies and the Greeks and the Romans, then the program in Amsterdam gives much more focus to them, and also with great lecturers and professors. Mm-hmm. So if it's Greeks and the Romans that you're for specifically, then you better go to Amsterdam. If it's a broader training, World Archaeological, and also more, I think, methodological, theoretical, as we discussed, then Leiden would be the better option.
Yeah, well, having to add to that, I also think that in terms of Roman and Greek, it might not be taught per se or on its own, but
you're right.
You will get it in a more broad overview in Leiden, though. Like we will discuss it in terms of Silk Roads, or for example, Byzantine archaeology is also big in Leiden, and that is, you can see it as a continuation of Roman times in that sense. So I do think that even though it might not be taught on its own, and it will, that's more in Groningen or Amsterdam. So if that's really what you want to focus on, please visit those programs as well. But if you want to see it again, in a more broad perspective, or see how it how it is interconnected with other cultures, then I would definitely recommend checking our program out as well. Yeah,
it's good. Yeah, it is the big picture we are interested in, you could say. I see we have time for 2 more questions. Do graduates usually go on to specialize with a master's in archaeology in Leiden?
Yeah.
Yes. We think that is because we have such a great faculty and education program. No, but most of them do. I don't know the exact percentage, but no.
Yeah, I don't have the numbers on it, but it's also because those tracks again are very broad, and you'll have all those things incorporated in your bachelor already. So if you have found that thing you're interested in, it is very easily connected to pursue that in your master's then as well, because it is so connected to each other really, and you've already had that basics in your bachelor's.
But people also go do other things.
Yep.
So it's not 100% that continues.
Yeah, I can give myself as an example here, because I realized I like combining it with religious studies. So I'm doing both now. I'm doing a master's in religious studies and a master's in global archaeology to really combine those two. So options are open.
Options are open, and that's important. We have time for one final question then, and that is for you, I think, Vera. Sophia asked, why did you choose to study archaeology?
Yeah, that's a good question. I must make another confession here. It wasn't my first choice either. I just never considered it, in all honesty, because where I'm from, it was not... I'm far away from Leiden, I'm far away from Amsterdam, far away from Groningen, so I never had all these presentations about it. I just knew I was interested in the past, and I knew I was interested in cultures and religion, but I figured the best way to learn about this is in a more broad program. So I did something else first, but then realized that I really missed sort of the human side of it, or more the practical side of it. I really wanted to learn about people in the past, maybe through, in a more tangible way, I guess, not just through sources. So then, I quickly came to archaeology, because now you really are, working with that material. It is really, all you're concerned with is really the things from the past. You even dig it up yourself. You have something tangible there, and it's really like solving a puzzle. So I'm really happy I made that switch, and I do feel like I'm in the right spot now. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Thank you very much at home for all your questions. It's terrible that we're now talking to cameras and we don't have you in front of us, and that we cannot invite you for a coffee to answer further questions. You have been informed how to get more information, so it's possible to chat. You can make appointments for video calls, and most importantly, perhaps, November 26th, there is the open day at the faculty, and we hope that you will be able to join us there. So thank you very much. We hope that you have a good impression of what we have to offer, and we hope that also we have been able to convey our enthusiasm for what we do here in Leiden. Do not hesitate to be in touch if you want more information, and have a nice weekend. Bye-bye.